right, so we're sitting here with Jason Fried.
Jason Fried, right. Yeah.
37 Signals.
Right.
And can you tell us a little bit about what your company does?
Sure, so 37 Signals, we do a few different things, but primarily we design web-based applications for collaboration for small business. So you can share to-do lists, you can share ideas, you can share calendars and files and things like that with clients or just internally online. Basecamp, Highrise, Backpack, Campfire, those are our main products. We've also written a couple books, and we do a lot of sort of speaking around the country about our ideas about business and entrepreneurship and things like that.
Okay, so you're speaking at the Web 2.0 Expo in New York the second week of September. What are you going to talk about?
Well, I actually have two speaking slots there, apparently. So I'm speaking one on the 10 things we've learned at 37 Signals, so probably a little bit more than 10, but the things we've learned at 37 Signals over the past few years about design, entrepreneurship, running a business, customers, things like that. And then I also am doing a small 15-minute talk, one of the keynotes, and I don't really know what I'm going to talk about yet. I have a few ideas, but they just asked me to do it yesterday to fill in for someone who can't make it, so I have to kind of come up with a new idea for a small talk.
So in terms of the 10 things that you've learned, which it might be 10 more or less.
Right.
Could you give us some hints, maybe give us two?
Sure. So one of the things we've learned is that interruption is a really dangerous idea. The idea that most offices are set up for interruption. They promote interruption by having everybody together all the time, and you can't actually get work done when you're interrupting everybody or you're being interrupted. So that's one thing I'm going to talk about. And then I want to talk about generally small teams doing things the easy way. You know, there's a bunch of different ways to do something. Do it the easy way instead of the hard way first. See what happens. Talk about the 4-day work week. We only work 4 days here. So a variety of like sort of the ideas that we've come up with over the past few years. They're not all unique ideas, but they're kind of a collection of ideas that we think work really well for building a small company.
So you've got a bunch of employees scattered throughout the world. It's all about telepresence. You only work 4 days a week.
Uh-huh.
Talk to me a little bit about how the company works. What do you do on a given day? Do you have a conference call? Do you hang it on Campfire, or do you use something like Skype or IRC?
Sure. So we have currently 10 people. We're about to go up to 12, but we have 10 right now. 5 are here in Chicago, and 5 are in 5 other cities around the country. Actually, one guy's in Toronto, so around North America, we'll say. And even the people in Chicago don't see each other very often, maybe once a week max, if that. So we're very virtual, and we use the tools that we built to collaborate. Primarily, we use Campfire all day long, which is our group chat tool, where we're able to have conversations all day long in a persistent chat room and be able to scroll back and get transcripts and share files and share code in real time, pictures, things like that. So we use that primarily, but we also use instant messaging a lot for quick one-on-one chats. Campfire is great for the group chat, but if you want to talk to someone really quickly one-on-one, we use iChat for that. We also use iChat screen sharing. We're all on Macs, so we can screen share every once in a while. If I want to show Ryan something, I can just have him share my screen or vice versa, things like that. And we use iChat audio as well sometimes, just for quick audio conferences. But primarily we're text-based, and we think that helps everyone focus on really what they want to say. Because when you're on the phone or something, you can just keep talking. But typing's hard. Typing takes time and effort in a way that generally encourages people to be brief. And that's why we like email and text.
So you don't have meetings?
We don't have the typical meeting, which is like, let's have a meeting at 1 o'clock, everyone gather into a room. But we're actually constantly collaborating and discussing things, but in a passive way, in that it's going on the web in Campfire or Basecamp or wherever. But if I don't want to pay attention to it right now, I don't have to. Unlike a traditional meeting where I have to go into the conference room, I have to stop what I was doing, I have to listen to someone else for an hour. We don't think that that's really an effective way of doing things. Sometimes there are things that you need to discuss right now, but for the most part, you just need to talk about stuff when you need to talk about it. So if someone has a question for me and it's not urgent, I'll get to it when I'm free, not right now when they think they need an answer. So we definitely encourage passive meetings and passive collaboration, but we're really not fans of the traditional meeting scenario.
Where did you get these ideas from, or do you think you've been somewhat of a source for the industry?
These ideas have just kind of bubbled up for us. They're not. We didn't sit down and decide that we're never going to have meetings, or that we're not going to do functional specifications documents, or the things that we don't do that a lot of people in the industry do. They're just things that we realized. We started out, 1999 we started the company, and we did more traditional design work, and we did this long, drawn-out process and delivered all these documents along the way and deliverables, and we realized eventually that they don't really matter. They're just things you deliver because you think you're supposed to, or you think you have to. And we started doing less and less of those things, less wireframes, less documentation, less functional spec sort of stuff. And we realized that by sort of winging it, we're actually able to come up with a better solution because we can make decisions while we're doing the things instead of before. And so it's just been a series of things we've been trying over the years, and we've realized that whenever we have a meeting, it's generally a waste of time. So let's collaborate sort of eternally, but passively, and things get done better that way. It actually it offloads the groupthink and actually encourages people to make decisions, which is a really valuable thing. But these ideas aren't unique to us. I think that a lot of these ideas have been used by other companies in some way or another, but we're kind of trying to pull a bunch of these ideas together, so it's more of a cohesive vision and not just this one idea we have, but less meetings, more passive stuff. Let's stay away from each other. Let's interrupt each other less. All these things together have kind of formed our philosophy.
In the same way, someone might say, look, we can do our application in Rails because look at 37 Signals. They have a highly scalable, large number of users hitting a system. It works, it's simple, it's scalable. They might say, look, 37 Signals has a 4-day work week. 37 Signals doesn't have meetings. 37 Signals allows our workers to work from home. Mm-hmm. I speak to the people who are stuck at that job, working for a boss who likes to hear himself talk in a daily meeting for 2 hours.
Right.
How can people sort of get to a point where they're not being interrupted by the mechanics of the corporation?
Well, the first thing I would say is you shouldn't just try and be like us because that's how we are. You should really do what works best for you. And that might be what we do, or it might be 20% of what we do and 20% of what someone else does. So you should really come up with your own ideas about what's important. What works for us isn't necessarily going to work for everybody, or nor should it. However, if you do want to find yourself in meetings less and not worrying about that office politics stuff as much, you may have to get another job, to be honest with you. I mean, some of these things you can't change if you're just one person in an organization that is built to be more traditional. It's really hard to change that organization if you don't have the power to change it. What you can do, though, is for example, you don't want to go in there and say, we're going to change tomorrow. You might want to pick a small project that everybody's working on or that's coming up and try some new ideas just around that one specific small project. See how that works out. And then maybe you can get some traction when people say, wow, we actually got something done in 3 weeks. Usually it takes 3 months. Okay, what do we do? Well, we didn't meet a lot. We actually just did the damn work, and that's what happened. It turns out to work. So that's a good way to sort of get some traction, I think, is to prove that these ideas work on a small scale, and then you can slowly sort of infect everybody else with these sort of ideas. Because I think at the end of the day, progress and results are really what drive people to make changes, not just these ideas, but actually showing that they work.
I saw recently that you're going to speak to a group of corporate leaders in Chicago, I think at a Tech Nexus speech of some sort. Has the corporate culture of Chicago sought you out?
No, we haven't really been sought out by the traditional business industry or whatever you'd call it in Chicago. Chicago's been sort of strange in that way, that we've gotten a lot of press, but it hasn't really been in the city. We're starting to get more of it, but people in New York pay more attention to us, and San Francisco pay more attention to us than the media does in Chicago, which is fine because Chicago is just a different place. It's not as focused on technology businesses, but things are starting to turn around, which is nice. There's some interesting technology companies in Chicago, so people are starting to pay more attention, but we haven't really been sought out by the head of Boeing or I don't even know if Sears is here anymore. I don't think they are, but or Abbott Labs or anybody here, or Navtech. They don't seem to be either. We don't seem to be on their radar, or they don't need to hear from us, which is totally fine too. I don't think we have all the answers at all, but I do enjoy speaking to people who are coming from a completely different point of view. It's more interesting to me. I get to learn something too, and it's just more fun, I think, than to even go to an event where everyone kind of agrees with you. So I hope to do more of that sort of. I hope to inject myself more into that traditional corporate culture and see if I can encourage people to try something new.
What's your role at the company? What would you call yourself if you had to choose a word?
We don't really have titles, so I don't know. I mean, technically, I'm a managing member because we're an LLC, but president, I guess, is a word that would be used. I mean, I kind of come up with the ideas for the products. I kind of oversee everything, not so much from a technical point of view. That's what David's role is, because I'm not a technical person, but I come up with the general ideas for interface design, and then, not always, but I kind of have the broad taste suggestions as to where we should go on the interface design level. I do most of the whatever PR we do, whatever marketing we do are generally my ideas. And I write a lot on the blog. But I kind of do everything. I'm very multi-purpose, but I'm definitely not technical.
Now, you don't have a PR firm.
We don't.
Unlike a lot of startups, unlike a lot of companies. And
Right.
that's something that you said over and over again. Don't hire a PR firm.
Right.
Could you tell me, in hindsight, what were the pros and cons of it?
Sure. Just to come clean about that, we did work with the PR firm once for 3 months. So I just want to make sure that I'm not burying that. That was more of an experiment. It worked out pretty well, but it wasn't really something we wanted to continue to do. We've always chosen to teach to get the word out. So we think that you can spend a lot on PR firms. Good ones are $10,000, $20,000 a month, which just seems like a lot of cash to spend on something that isn't really guaranteeing a whole lot. So we've just chosen to teach and to tell a story about who we are and what we believe in. And I think when you teach people, you get a lot of attention. And when you share things that a lot of companies wouldn't share, you get a lot of attention. And the media seems to have liked that a lot. We've been in a lot of publications talking about our point of view. We didn't have to pitch them. They actually came to us. So I don't know if we've ever actually pitched a journalist or not. We may have sent them a link about something we did here and there, but we haven't really made an aggressive pitch. They've generally come to us. And I think it's because they think our story's interesting. They think the way that we pitch ourselves in not a formal pitch, but in a general, here's what we believe point of view, I think that they find that pretty interesting. So that would encourage people to teach everything they possibly can, share as many of the experiences that they can, tell people the things that work for them, and make sure that they let everyone know that this isn't the only way to do stuff, this is how we do it. And I think by doing that, you can really have a pretty good press impact without actually having to play the typical PR, pitch the big time guys' names.
So staying on this topic, you said that the way to succeed without a PR firm is to teach. You could say that some people, if you said, what does 37 Signals do? Some people might say, oh yeah, they're the Rails consultants, or aren't they a management consulting company? It seems like by being transparent, if you read your blog, you get the sense that you're trying to sell services, or you're trying to sell this sort of philosophy of work. Do you find it to be a frequent thing where someone doesn't know that you actually sell Backpack and Basecamp and Highrise?
I think there's definitely some people, yes. In some cases, yes. Some people know us for sort of the entrepreneurship guidance that we give and not necessarily the products. But that's, to us, a good thing in some ways, because eventually, the products will seep into their mind. And that's kind of, one of the ideas is to not just be a company that sells products, like everyone sells products, but to stand for something greater than that and to believe in something greater than that. And then eventually maybe the products will rub off on somebody. And if they don't too, that's completely fine as well. But I think that in some ways there is a challenge trying to get the word out about what we do and who we are and have a constant clear message, because we do a few different things. We talk about entrepreneurship and design. We have a strong design presence. We do this web-based software. We've done Rails. So there's a lot of different things going on. We're actually trying to figure out the best way to explain 37 Signals to people. We haven't quite figured it out yet. So it's something we're struggling with ourselves.
One thing that people have noted that differentiates your products from other products is the simple design. And I know that you sublet office space from Kudal Partners, which is a pretty successful design firm based in Chicago. Tell me about how you made that connection, if that is a connection that has been involved in the way that your products look.
Sure. The way they look doesn't really have anything to do with the office space that we share. But I met Jim Kudal, 8 years ago or something like that. I forget exactly how we met. I think we met through a mutual friend. And Jim and I share a similar point of view on design and entrepreneurship, and that design firms should take control of their own skills and creativity and do something with it, not just always sell it to clients, but to actually come up with an idea, a product, and then you can sell the product. And so we kind of share a very similar outlook on that. But as far as the aesthetic goes, I think we have different aesthetics, different looks and feels that we feel comfortable with. But in general, I think we're all both of us are about clarity and getting the message out. And we're really both, we think writing is really important. Have to be good writers, have to write a lot, have to be clear, and that words ultimately are more important than visuals. And that, if you had to take one thing, words or visuals, I would take words every day over visuals. So I think that Jim's sort of in the same boat there.
Back to the sublet. I went to Google's headquarters 3 weeks ago. And you could say you're in the same industry. You both sell web apps.
Sure.
Google's headquarters looks like a spaceport. It looks
Right.
like a rocket ship is about to be launched from an underground cave
Right.
full of a clone army.
Right.
You walk up to your office, I don't even think I saw the name 37 Signals anywhere.
Yeah.
Tell me about the importance or the lack of importance or the lack of emphasis placed on physical space. Do you just don't think it's important to have any sort of physical space? for the
Well,
company?
so we do share space. We have an office space here, but we don't have our name on the door, and there's no name on the buzzer, and there's no indication that we're here. I think the space part is interesting, or is important just when you do need to get together with people. I think it's nice to have a place to go. But in general, we think that physical space encourages interruption a little bit too much. Unless everyone had their own unique office with closed doors, like the old way of kind of having an office set up, I actually think that that way is more effective than the big open spaces where everyone can talk to one another all the time. Because whenever we're all together in the same space, like working, we don't get a whole lot of work done. We might get a lot of like BSing done, but we don't get a whole lot of work done. So I think by not having this like this unique 37 signal space, we in some ways don't encourage people to come here. We actually just encourage people to get the work done wherever they're most comfortable. I think when you work for a company that puts a lot of money into their space, they want everyone to show up every day, and there's definitely value in that. Especially if you're a larger company, I think there's probably value in that. But for us, it's just never been something we felt like was important, and we don't want to spend the money on it, to be honest with you. I mean, I think there is something cool about having a space that is definitely your own and interesting, and people get excited about that, and they want to kind of come to work. But in some ways, we're saying we don't actually want everyone to come together. We want people to stay away from each other to actually get the work done.
How do you manage roles? It sounds like you have a very informal space, a very informal company. You don't have a title. David doesn't have a title.
Right.
Ryan doesn't have a title.
Right.
But are there ever points at which it becomes necessary to say the decision to do X rests with him or
Sure.
her? How do you manage conflict in a organization that has little structure?
Sure. I don't think that titles inform decisions. I don't think that because this person has this title and they made the decision, it's the right decision. So we're more interested in the right person making the right decision. If that happens to be Ryan, then Ryan can make that decision. If that happens to be Jameis, then Jameis can make the decision. The person who's closest to the work that's being done usually makes the decisions. In some cases, that decision ultimately will rise to the top and where a call has to be made, but it's pretty rare. We encourage people to make their own decisions, and if they're wrong, we fix them. But we would rather encourage people to make their own decisions and kind of be independent in that way than constantly have to have someone approve every decision that's made. Because I think then people don't feel any ownership. They don't feel like they're trusted, and they don't feel like I would rely on them to be smart enough to make a decision. I'd rather have them make those decisions, and if they're wrong, we can fix them. But I'd rather default on the side that they're going to be right because we trust the people.
So in terms of relating this to like an open source idea, that's the idea of lazy consensus.
Somewhat, but I think you kind of have to have a culture. That's kind of the problem with a lot of open source projects. And I don't know, I might like get over my head on this, but I think a lot of
do.
Okay, I think a lot of open source projects that the problem is there isn't a leader, there isn't a culture necessarily who's making decisions based on taste and what needs to come in and what needs to go out, or what should stay out, things like that. So at our company, there's definitely a culture. We all share the same point of view in terms of what's important and what isn't. So that's why I feel more comfortable having people make decisions inside 37 Signals that aren't my own decisions. In an open source environment, when everyone has completely different points of view, well, that's not always true, but there's not that shared sense of like purpose in some ways. I think it's harder to make really good decisions, especially when it comes to the user experience. On infrastructure, it's a little bit different, but on like public products, like open source products, I think it's harder for people to come to consensus about a good user experience decision because there really is no one to make that final call, and there's no one from the top down saying these are the types of values that we all hold dear. So that's kind of the difference, I think.
And you've clearly emphasized that having an opinion matters, both technically and from a product perspective. You've received a little bit of criticism for being somewhat inflexible when someone on a user list says, I would like to do X, Y, and Z with your product,
Sure.
And the response is no. It's not dissimilar from the way that one would view an Apple saying, we're not going to add another button.
Right.
Even though you really want to
Right, sure.
get a mouse.
Sure.
Could you talk
Right.
a little bit about the value of being inflexible to the customer?
Well, I think it's
and that's probably not the right word.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's sort of like dangerous territory to talk about this sometimes because people can take it the wrong way. We're very open to what people have to say to us. We listen to everybody. We have comments on our blog. We don't censor them. Like, people can scream and yell at us if they want, and people can be nice and polite if they want. It's up to them. We listen to everything that people say. But at the end of the day, you have to be an editor. You have to decide. You have to be a museum curator. Some things stay and some things aren't going to make it in the museum. That's just the way it's going to be. And so we're just honest about that. I think a lot of companies, I don't really like to say that. I hate this, I think a lot of people, because that's not fair. But some companies are just out to make everybody happy by including everything. And I think you can tell when you use their products that they're usually pretty bad because they're overloaded with compromises. And we try and say that we recognize that everyone's going to be happy with our products, and what's most important is that we make the people who are really happy with our products really happy. Instead of the people who are on the edge that aren't sure about our stuff, we're not really that interested in making them happy. We're more interested in making the people who are really into what we're doing very, very happy. And those people are always looking for simple things that just work, things that don't have a lot of stuff. That's why they come to us, because everything else is, not everything, but a lot of the things are bloated and hard to use and complex. So we see ourselves as editors and museum curators, where we look at all the art, we look at all the ideas, we look at all the words, but ultimately we have to pare those down to see what's in the best interest of the product. And sometimes that upsets people because we're not going to add things that they want. But I think at the end of the day, what's tough for people to understand, and it was tough for me to understand until I got in this business, was that there's a million people just like me out there. We all have our own ideas about what needs to go into this thing, and if they saw the universe of suggestions, they would understand that most of them conflict. This person wants this thing, this other person wants something else, and they're totally conflicting ideas. So we can't add everything. We have to make decisions about what's best for the vast majority of our customers. So,
well, it would mean that Basecamp would look like Microsoft Project.
Or worse, yeah. And that's the trick. And we recognize that Basecamp can't be everything for everybody, nor should it. So we have to make those decisions about what makes it and what doesn't. But the majority of the stuff that we add to our products starts out as customer requests. We like to say about 90%. I don't know exactly, but it's almost all of the ideas that we add to our products start as customer requests. That's not to say that we implement them exactly as a specific customer wants, but the idea is important. And we think about how to best implement that idea and solve a problem that someone has, and then add that feature to the product potentially.
Do you do any opposition research?
No.
So,
I mean, we're aware of who the competition is, but we don't pay much attention to them at all. I don't think that you really should. I think that you can't control the competition. The competition is ever changing. If you can't control it and you can't really put your finger on it, then there's really no point worrying about it. You need to deliver the product that you think is good, that your customers want, not what their customers want. So, and I think there's lots of room these days for 100 successful companies in our space. There's plenty of people out there, plenty of room to have a lot of people be successful. So we've never thought much about the competition.
Question: what's the central problem? What is the transaction
Sure.
in venture capitalism or venture capital
Yeah.
that makes it go bad?
Our fundamental problem with outside funding is mainly around the idea of initial funding. When we're starting up a company, usually you need to get funding traditionally for capital expenditures, like you need to build something. You need to start a factory, you need to get widgets, you need to buy materials. Those things are kind of gone today, at least in our industry. I'm not talking about all businesses, I'm talking about software businesses fundamentally. The only real cost today is people. The servers are dead cheap. I mean, Basecamp ran on one server for a year. It's like $150 a month. You can scrape that up. Software, infrastructure software is free, open source for the most part. So your costs are pretty much related to human capital, a few employees perhaps. It seems wrong, first of all, it seems wrong to me to have a big team to start to begin with. I think you could start a company with 1 or 2 or 3 people. And those people might have to sacrifice a little bit initially, but I think you can do that. And I would encourage people to try that. So the VCs come to you and they want to give you a bunch of money, and there's generally 2 things you're going to spend it on. People, you're going to hire a bunch of people, or you're going to spend a lot of money on marketing and advertising. And I think that those are the things you shouldn't be worrying about initially. You shouldn't be hiring a lot of people, and marketing and advertising is a terrible idea to start a company, I think. I think it's better for you to be a bit obscure for a while, to sort of learn and fail in obscurity before you shine the spotlight on you by spending a ton of money in the press and getting a whole bunch of news about what you're doing. So then I don't see much of a role for venture capital up front. I think it's also because you don't need that money to start the business. I think you can do something on your own for a year and see what happens. And then if you have something there, 2 years, and you have something there, maybe then you want to take it to the next level. Maybe you do need to hire someone. I don't know. Maybe you do need outside investment. I would still say that you should really grow within your means. If you can't grow within your means, maybe you're not charging enough, you don't have enough customers yet. But at that point, maybe advertising might help. But I just think initially it's a bad idea. It's also a bad idea. It's a bad financial transaction, because when you start a company, you have no leverage. You have nothing. And you're basically giving up a huge chunk of your business to someone who knows a whole lot more about funding and finances than you do. And so it just seems like the wrong time to enter into such a critical financial arrangement when you have no leverage, you have really nothing to offer, and this other company is going to take a big chunk of your business. So I just don't like that. I'm not opposed to the idea of investment down the road if you think something's working. For example, Threadless, a t-shirt company based here in Chicago. They've been very, very successful. They talk about this publicly. They've tens of millions of dollars worth of revenues, I believe. And they finally got funding last year. They didn't really technically need funding to run the business, but they have some expansion plans that they want to do, and that's like such a big capital investment that they needed help on the outside, and they wanted some advice on like running retail shops and things like that, things that they haven't done before. To me, that makes more sense. They have a proven business model. They have something to offer the VCs. The VCs have something to offer to them, and that makes sense. But initially, I don't think you have much to offer the VCs, so they're going to take a big chunk of your company, and then the type of money they're going to give you is going to go in the wrong places initially, and I think that's just a kind of a recipe for disaster.
So if an established company, like let's say 37 Signals, wanted to get into the business of launching communications satellites into space, and you had a really proven business model at a great price, and a bunch of customers lined up, you just needed somebody to fund the rockets.
Sure,
that makes sense.
I think so.
But someone coming out of school with a business plan and a bunch of magic and a story, that's not the time.
I think you can do that on your own. I don't think you need their help. I don't think you need the VC's help, because really what they're going to help you with is money. And you really don't need that much money to get going these days. Like I was saying earlier, don't need hardware, don't need software. You just need people, and you don't need that many either. So the money, I think, just kind of goes to your head, and look, when you have money, you spend it. That's what people do. And especially VCs encourage you to spend it because they want to fund more. Like VCs, I don't know many people who just take one round. You take one round and you run out, and you take another round, and you take another round, and then you've just lost control of the whole thing. So I just think it's better to start from sort of more of a position of frugality, I guess is the right word, rather than like having all these resources. Those constraints, not having the money, will encourage you to come up with creative solutions and solve problems simply. When you have all this money, you can do a whole bunch of stuff and spend money in the wrong places and advertise things that aren't really quite ready for prime time, and I think then you're just asking for it. So I would stay away from that in the early stages.
That would be like a guerrilla startup, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can call it that. I don't know. I just don't think that you want that kind of attention starting out. I really think you should just do it yourself, see what happens, build something, and hopefully you won't need any money at all. But if you do down the road and you have proven business and customers, then it might make sense.
Okay, so you're going to be at Web 2.0 Expo. Maybe you might actually be speaking to people at the conference right now.
Right.
There are a bunch of people in the audience who are trying to see what's the next thing.
Yeah.
And maybe that's social networking plus bling tones for the tweens.
Bling tones is that a real thing? Because you should trademark that if you haven't. Bling tones, that totally works. Yeah. Okay.
I'm not going to get into that business.
Okay.
So anyone who just heard that is free to get into
free to go
business.
for it. Okay.
What's next? What's the big thing in your mind?
I don't think about that sort of stuff. So I don't really care about the next big thing. What's the difference? To me, the big thing always is building a great product, taking care of your customers, building something that you believe in, and staying true to what you believe in. I think that's really the big thing. That's always the big thing.
So it's a very stoic take on technology. You're just saying, we're making money. Base camp, high-rise, backpack.
Campfire.
Right.
Getting real.
We're focusing on the details. We're not thinking about how to make this a holographic interface to Basecamp.
Right.
With VoIP.
Well, I mean, there's some things down the road we might want to explore, but I don't really think that they're going to be game changers. Like if we added VoIP to high rise or something, like, okay, that's an interesting thing to add, but Is it really changed the game? I don't think so much. So we don't really think about that next big technological thing. And I think that's generally the problem with technology companies is they're too focused on the next big thing. The best advice I've ever gotten in business is actually Jeff Bezos, who is one of our only investor in our company. He said you should focus on the things that don't change in your business, which I think is a really interesting way of looking at it. Think about the things that people are going to want today and 10 years from now. That's what you should be investing in. So in Amazon's case, that would be like, fast shipping or free shipping, great selection, good return policies, good prices. Those are the things people are going to want today and 10 years from now. In our business, it's things like speed, simplicity. I don't think people are going to wake up in 2018 and say, God, I wish software was harder to use, or I wish this was slower. So speed, simplicity, ease of use, clarity, things like that are the things we can invest in. That stuff's going to kind of be timeless in a way. So that's what's interesting to us. It's not the next big thing that may or may not happen, because that thing that's big will fade out maybe and something else will happen. But just staying true to these like basic principles of good product, good service, focusing on the things that are going to matter today and 10 years from now. Those are the things that we're really interested in doing.
So there's going to be a lot of people focused on social networks.
Right.
And they're going to look at what you do and say, you're sitting on gold mines. How come you didn't turn that, 2 trillion user base into some sort of socially aware, socially connected app?
In what way?
Is that a conversation that you've had internally? Like, hey, we could invite people to your Basecamp instance.
Well, you can. I mean, you can do that. So you can add people to your Basecamp projects or invite people to your Backpack account. So you have that, but there aren't the typical like social networking things where you're friends with this person who you're working on a Basecamp project with. It's more about, what do you need to get done? You need to invite this person to a project because they're a part of the project, then you invite them in, but not just like to hang out. You don't hang out in Basecamp or Backpack. So I think that the social aspects of our tools are more realistic in terms of like what would you really do? You have a project, someone needs to get involved, you invite them into the project. But it's not someone who's just here to observe the project. But there's other things we could do, community stuff that we could do. We have forums and whatnot for our products, but there's other things we can do, and we've thought about some of those things. But I'm not in any rush to build out like whatever true social networking features, whatever that really means. We're not kind of in a rush to do that. And I haven't seen anyone who's actually. MySpace is one example of a company that's been. Well, I don't even know if they've been technically successful. I mean, they got bought out for a lot of money, but I'm not sure the social stuff is actually paying off for anybody yet. I mean, Facebook has a big valuation, a lot of people use it, but what does that really mean, So
I guess I'm asking my question because you see an app like Basecamp and you think to yourself, well, where's the Facebook integration for that? Or
right.
How could I add that as a widget?
Yeah, sure.
Google main page.
Right.
Is it just not something you're focused on?
Well, I can tell you that someone actually has built something called Periscope, which is a Basecamp interface to like iGoogle or whatever that is. Like you can put the widget on your Google homepage or whatever.
I've used it twice.
Okay. So right. So I use my Yahoo. I'm like a my Yahoo guy. But anyway, someone has built that. So we have APIs where people can do those sorts of things, and they can build these sorts of tools. It's not our focus, widgets and Facebook apps, and our focus are our products as they stand. And then we have APIs on all of our products except Campfire. There's an unofficial one, but anyway, where people can build these things. And there's I think 30 or 40 different products now that integrate with Basecamp, billing apps, invoicing apps, time tracking, accounting things. That's not our specialty, so we let other people do that. There's Mac OS 10 dashboard widgets that work with Tedalist and Backpack and stuff like that. So we let other people do that stuff. It's not really the thing that we're focused on.
You talk about focus. I think the message I get from you is we're focused on the basics of our product, but you've got a lot of attention. And you've probably had a lot of opportunity to brainstorm new products. I mean, do you find it tough not to get distracted by some of the possibilities of the technology?
No, because we're generally lazy, truthfully. I mean, I think laziness is a good thing in this sense, and that we don't really want to solve hard problems and do really hard work. We want to find out what the simple problems are and solve those, because I think most people's problems are pretty simple. So all this detailed integration work with other products and third-party stuff and Facebook and all that stuff, that's actually kind of a hard thing to do. for us at least, because that's not really what we're focused on doing. So we don't get carried away by that. We do have a lot of ideas, things that we could do. We have a lot of, oh, wouldn't it be cool if conversations, if you can do this in Basecamp, or Backpack and Basecamp could work better together. And we're going to work on some of those integrations between our products. So there's a lot of ideas that we can pursue, but we're also very aware of the work involved and also what's the payoff. A lot of times, I think companies confuse enthusiasm with priority quite a bit, especially when it comes to like new technologies. They're really enthused about them, so they do them, but they're not really high priority. When you're doing that, when you're a small company, you can't do other things. So we're very focused on the things that are actually valuable for us and our customers, and not so much valuable for the TechCrunch crowd who wants the latest, widget thing or Facebook integration.
Or the latest blink job.
Or the latest blink tip, right?
So
right.
I will have to disagree with you with one thing you said previously.
Sure.
So it's tough to hang out at Basecamp. I have a Basecamp entrant. I have an instance of my own.
Okay.
I'm always hanging out at my Basecamp instance.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
a pretty cool place to hang out.
Is it cool?
Yeah.
What's going on in there?
Nothing.
Okay, cool.
Just-
That's cool. If you're into that loner thing, totally cool. Yeah, just hang out in your own account.
It's just me. I've got a few whiteboards.
Right, perfect. Hey, whatever. It works.
Pretty crazy
And you're
place.
allowed to do that. There's no rules against that.
It's free.
Right, it's free.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for talking to us today, or talking to me.
Sure, my
today.
pleasure. Thanks for interviewing me. I hope the stuff was valuable.
Is there anything I forgot to ask?
Well, it depends what you want to know. I'm here to answer any question you have.
Tell me a secret.
Tell you a secret. I can't do that on video. But if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. Takes on anything.
You know what? I've run out of questions.
You're out. Okay,
Yeah.
good deal.
All
Well,
right.
thank you.
Okay. Well,